The massive chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with activity. Hundreds of alien representatives from across the galaxy sat in rising tiers of seats, their attention fixed on the central holographic display. The image showed a small fleet of ships, barely visible against the backdrop of a blue-green planet. Admiral Reed stood at the podium, his gray-scaled skin reflecting the soft blue light of the hologram. His four eyes blinked in sequence as he gestured at the image with one of his upper limbs. Honorable Council members, our deep space sensors have detected a new spacefaring species in Sector 7. They call themselves humans. A quiet murmur spread through the chamber. New species were rare, especially ones that had achieved space travel without any guidance from the Council. As you can see, Reed continued, zooming in on one of the ships, their vessels are remarkably small. The largest human ship we've detected is barely the size of our standard patrol craft. He let out a sound that might have been a laugh. Their entire fleet could fit in the cargo bay of a single Council dreadnought. The chamber filled with amused sounds from various species. Some clicked their mandibles, others fluttered their respiratory membranes. They all shared the same sentiment. These humans were clearly primitive. In the back of the chamber, Intelligence Officer Jack Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Unlike the other members of the Council's Intelligence Division, Thompson was human, the first of his kind to work with the Council. He had been watching the energy readings from Earth's fleet, and what he saw worried him. Not for Earth's sake, but for the Council's. Thompson stood up, his plain black uniform standing out among the colorful robes of the other officials. Admiral Reed, if I may speak. Reed's upper eyes fixed on Thompson, while his lower pair continued monitoring the display. The Council recognizes Intelligence Officer Thompson. The size of these ships might be misleading, Thompson said, his voice clear and steady. Our energy readings show unusual patterns. The power output doesn't match what we expect from vessels of that size. Admiral Reed waved one of his limbs dismissively. Officer Thompson, while we appreciate your personal interest in this matter, the readings are clearly explained by primitive shielding attempts. These humans are using basic nuclear fusion drives, nothing more. But sir, Thompson persisted, the energy density is. Thank you, Officer Thompson, Reed cut him off. Your concern for your species is admirable, but unnecessary. The Council has encountered many new spacefaring races. We know how to handle this situation. Thompson sat down slowly, watching as Reed turned back to the main display. On his datapad, Thompson began typing a detailed report about the energy readings. Someone needed to understand what they were really seeing. Reed continued his presentation. I recommend we send the Third Fleet to make first contact. A proper show of force will help these humans understand their place in the galactic community. The Council President, a tall being with crystalline features, leaned forward. And if they resist? Reed's mouthparts twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. Their ships are toys compared to ours. The Third Fleet carries more firepower than their entire civilization. They would be foolish to resist. As the Council members nodded in agreement, Thompson finished his report. The energy readings showed something impossible. Power signatures that suggested technology far beyond anything the Council possessed, all packed into ships a fraction of the size of standard vessels. He attached his analysis and sent it to the Council's emergency archives. The message bounced back. Report filed. Low priority. Paranoid speculation. Thompson closed his datapad and watched as the Council voted unanimously to send the Third Fleet to Earth. Nobody noticed the small smile on his face. They would learn soon enough why humans built small ships. His people had a saying, good things come in small packages. As the chamber emptied, the hologram continued to spin slowly, showing Earth's tiny fleet orbiting their homeworld. In just a few days, the massive Third Fleet would arrive, expecting to find primitive ships and an easy victory. They would find something very different indeed. The Third Fleet of the Galactic Council emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. 30 massive warships, each one bigger than any human city, moved in perfect formation. Their silver hulls gleamed in the distant sunlight, bristling with weapon ports and launch bays. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Guardian, Captain Lisa Walker watched the tactical display with calm eyes. The alien ships were exactly where Intelligence Officer Thompson said they would be. "Main screen on," she ordered, her voice steady. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations as the massive view screen flickered to life. The alien ships filled the screen, making the Guardian look like a toy boat next to ocean liners. The biggest council ship was 5 miles long. The Guardian was barely a quarter mile. "They're hailing us," reported Communications Officer Peters, his fingers moving across his console. "All frequencies." Walker straightened her uniform. "Put them through." The screen split, showing Admiral Reed's alien face. All 4 of his eyes blinked at the sight of the human bridge crew. "This is Admiral Reed of the Galactic Council 3rd Fleet. You have the honor of being formally welcomed into the galactic community." "Thank you, Admiral," Walker replied politely. "I'm Captain Lisa Walker of the Earth Defense Force. We appreciate the welcome." Reed's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "As a new species, you'll need protection. The galaxy can be dangerous. The Council provides this protection in exchange for a reasonable fee." Several bridge officers hid their smiles. They all knew what was coming. "The fee is 30% of your world's production," Reed continued. "In return, you'll receive Council protection and guidance. This is a generous offer. Most new species pay 50%. Walker let the silence stretch for a moment. "That's an interesting proposal, Admiral. However, Earth doesn't require protection. We're quite capable of defending ourselves." A sound like grinding rocks came from Reed's throat. Alien laughter. "Captain, I don't think you understand your situation. Look at your ships. Look at ours. We could destroy your entire fleet with a single battle group." "Size isn't everything, Admiral," Walker said calmly. She pressed a button on her chair, sending a pre-prepared message. "I've just sent you our response to your offer. Please read it carefully." Reed's lower eyes glanced at something off-screen. His upper eyes widened slightly. "This is a rejection, and a demand for us to leave your space within 24 hours. More grinding laughter. "Captain Walker, surely you're joking. The Earth Defense Force doesn't joke about planetary security, Admiral." Walker's voice remained professional, but there was steel behind her words. "You have 24 hours to leave. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. You would threaten the 3rd Fleet. With these toys." Reed's scales darkened with anger. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order. Gunner, target their flagship's engine section. Minimal power. We don't want to destroy them. Yet." Walker didn't even flinch. "Admiral, I'll give you a piece of friendly advice. Don't judge a book by its cover. You might be surprised by what's inside." "Your primitive sayings mean nothing," Reed snarled. "You have 1 hour to reconsider your foolish position. After that, we will teach you the proper respect for the Council's authority." The transmission cut off. Walker looked around at her bridge crew, seeing the same contained excitement in their eyes that she felt. "Send word to the fleet," she ordered. "Begin protocol Tiny Dancer." Throughout Earth's fleet, hidden systems came to life. Panels that looked like simple hull plating shifted microscopically, revealing cutting-edge weapon ports. Energy readings that had been carefully masked began to rise. In his quarters aboard the Council flagship, Intelligence Officer Thompson watched his private displays light up with alerts. The human fleet was finally showing its true nature. He sent one last message to Admiral Reed's computer. "Final warning. Energy readings from human vessels exceeding all known parameters. Recommend immediate withdrawal." Like his previous warnings, this one was automatically filed away as paranoid speculation. Thompson shook his head and secured himself in his crash couch. The next few hours would change the galaxy forever. The council was about to learn why humans had focused on making their ships small and efficient instead of big and wasteful, and the lesson would be explosive. In the Grand Command Center of the Third Fleet's flagship, Admiral Reed watched the tactical display with all four eyes. His staff officers gathered around him, studying the movements of Earth's small fleet. "Look at them," Reed said, pointing at the screen. "They're spreading out, trying to look bigger than they are." He made that grinding laugh again, like small animals puffing up their fur. The tactical officer, a tall insectoid named Blue, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Sir, their formation is actually quite precise. They're moving with unusual coordination." "Of course they are," Reed dismissed. "Simple computers can manage basic formations. But look at their ships. No proper armor, no visible weapon ports. They're practically civilian vessels." On the bridge of the Guardian, Captain Walker watched her own tactical display. The Council ships were moving exactly as expected, spreading out into an attack formation that would work perfectly against larger vessels. "Status report," she ordered. "All ships report ready, Captain," her tactical officer responded. "Hidden systems are powered up but still masked. The Council's scans aren't detecting anything unusual." Walker nodded. "And our real readings. Each destroyer is now producing enough energy to power a small city," he replied with a grin. "The Council ships are still broadcasting their power levels for everyone to see. They're running at 40% capacity." "Overconfident," Walker said softly. "Just as we expected." Back on the Council flagship, a junior sensor officer suddenly straightened in his chair. "Admiral, I'm detecting some odd readings from the human ships." Reed walked over, his heavy footsteps echoing. "What kind of readings?" "Brief power spikes, sir. But they don't make sense. They're showing up and vanishing too quickly to measure." "Sensor ghosts," Reed declared. "Their primitive systems are probably leaking radiation. Nothing to worry about." In his quarters, Intelligence Officer Thompson watched both sides preparing for battle. His computer was catching every sensor ghost the human ships were producing. He knew what they really were: microscopic glimpses of the true power hidden within Earth's fleet. Humans had taken a different path than the Council races. While aliens built bigger and bigger ships, humans had focused on making everything smaller and more efficient. Every cubic inch of a human warship was packed with technology that the Council would consider impossible. Thompson remembered the first time he'd seen inside a Council ship. So much wasted space. Huge rooms filled with single machines that a human ship would fit into a closet. Weapon systems that stretched for hundreds of meters, when human versions were a tenth that size. On the Guardian, Walker received a message from Fleet Command. She read it and smiled. "Send to all ships," she ordered. "Begin power-up sequence. Let them see, just a little." Across the human fleet, carefully controlled energy leaks began. Just enough to make the Council nervous, but not enough to show their true capabilities. On the Council flagship, alarms began to sound. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out. "Power readings from the human ships are rising." Reed rushed to the display. "How much?" They're approaching our current output levels," the officer said in disbelief. "But that's impossible. Ships that small couldn't contain enough generators to." "Launch fighters," Reed ordered. "Show these humans what real warships can do." Massive launch bays opened on the Council ships. Hundreds of fighter craft poured out, each one nearly the size of a human destroyer. Walker watched the fighters deploy and pressed a button on her chair. "All ships, execute defense pattern Delta. Remember, minimal point defense only. Let's not show them everything just yet." The human ships began to move. Despite their small size, they accelerated far faster than should have been possible. The Council fighters, expecting slow, clumsy targets, found themselves chasing shadows. "Impossible," Reed whispered as he watched his fighters miss again and again. "How are they moving like that?" Thompson, watching from his quarters, finally allowed himself a small smile. The Council was about to learn why humanity had spent centuries making things smaller instead of bigger. The real lesson was about to begin. Admiral Reed had run out of patience. His fighters couldn't catch the human ships, and now his officers were starting to look worried. This was supposed to be a simple show of force, not an embarrassment. "Enough games," he growled. "All ships, target the human fleet. Full power to forward batteries. Let's show them what real weapons can do." The massive Council warships turned as one, their huge weapon ports glowing with green energy. Each cannon was longer than a human ship. On the Guardian's bridge, Captain Walker watched calmly as targeting locks appeared on her display. "All ships, hold position," she ordered. "Shields only. Let them throw their punch." "Captain," her tactical officer said quietly, "they're powering up their main guns to full. That's enough firepower to crack a small moon." Walker nodded. "Then it's a good thing we're not a moon." She pressed the fleet-wide comm button. "Remember your training, everyone. This is what we built for." The Council fleet fired. Green beams of energy, each one powerful enough to vaporize a city, lanced out across space. The human ships sat motionless in their path. On the Council flagship, officers cheered as the beams struck their targets. Then the cheering stopped. Where there should have been explosions, there were only shimmers of blue light. The human ships floated unchanged, surrounded by energy shields that glowed softly. "Impossible," Reed whispered. His officers stared at their screens in shock. "Scan those shields. Where are they getting the power?" In his quarters, Thompson watched the energy readings from the human fleet. The shields hadn't even reached 10% capacity. He remembered the first time he'd seen Earth's shield technology. Generators the size of a desk protecting entire ships. The Council needed rooms the size of stadiums for less protection. "No damage to any ships, Captain," reported the Guardian's tactical officer. "Shields holding at 92% efficiency. The Council fleet they appear to be in disarray." Walker allowed herself a small smile. "Send to all ships. Execute attack pattern Sigma. Single shot only, lowest power setting. Let's return the favor." The human ships moved. Their hulls shifted slightly as hidden panels opened, revealing weapon ports that hadn't been there before. Each port was tiny compared to the Council's massive cannons. Reed stared at his tactical display. "Those can't be weapon ports. They're too small to." The human fleet fired. Bright blue beams, no wider than a person, shot out from the tiny ships. They struck the Council vessels with surgical precision. Where they hit, the Council's shields flared and died. "Shields down on multiple ships." Reed's tactical officer shouted. "How? Their weapons are barely bigger than our point-defense guns." Walker watched the Council ships scrambling to restore their shields. "Status report." "All shots hit their targets," her tactical officer reported. "Weapon efficiency at 99%. Power cells still at 95% charge." Thompson felt the Council flagship shudder as it tried to bring its shields back online. He knew what the Council didn't. That humanity had learned long ago that size didn't matter. It was all about efficiency and design. "Admiral," Reed's sensor officer called out, voice shaking. "New readings from the human fleet. Their power outputs, they're still rising." Reed slammed his fist on his command console. "Impossible. Ships that small can't contain enough generators to." "Sir," the officer interrupted, "these readings suggest each human ship is producing more power than our entire battle group. But the energy signatures, we've never seen anything like this." Walker looked at the Council fleet, now desperately trying to regroup. "Send the standard message to all disabled Council ships," she ordered. "Do you want another demonstration, or are you ready to talk?" For the first time in Council history, their mighty warships had been helpless against an enemy's first strike. And from the power readings still climbing on their sensors, they hadn't seen anything yet. The real battle was just beginning. Admiral Reed's command center was in chaos. Half his fleet's shields were down, and the other half were struggling to understand how such tiny ships had done so much damage. The massive view screens showed the human vessels, still glowing faintly from their previous attack. "Get those shields back online," Reed shouted. "Launch all remaining fighters. I want those human ships surrounded." But before his orders could be carried out, Captain Walker's voice came through on all channels. "Admiral Reed, that was just a demonstration. Would you like to see what our ships can really do?" Reed's scales darkened with rage. "You dare to threaten?" "Not a threat, Admiral. A warning." Walker's voice remained calm. "Your ships are too big, too wasteful. You never stop to think that maybe bigger isn't better." On the Guardian's bridge, Walker nodded to her tactical officer. "All ships, combat power authorized. Show them what we can do." The human ships began to change. Panels all across their hulls slid open, revealing hundreds of weapon ports that had been perfectly hidden. Energy readings from the small ships suddenly spiked so high that the Council's sensors couldn't even measure them. "Admiral," Reed's sensor officer screamed. "Their power output, it's impossible. Each human ship is producing more energy than a star." Thompson, watching from his quarters, remembered the first time he'd seen Earth's compact fusion reactors. The Council used massive engines that took up half their ships. Humans had learned to build reactors smaller than a car that produced 10 times the power. The human fleet moved with impossible speed, their engines leaving trails of blue fire. Each ship spun and twisted like a dancer, taking up firing positions around the Council fleet. "Target their engines," Walker commanded. "Disable, don't destroy. Show them the difference between power and control." The human ships fired. This time, their weapons glowed white-hot. Precise beams cut through space, slicing into the Council ships with surgical accuracy. Each shot hit exactly where intended, disabling engines and weapons without causing catastrophic damage. "How are they doing this?" Reed demanded, watching his mighty fleet being picked apart. "Their weapons are so small. Size isn't everything," Thompson said, finally stepping onto the bridge. "Humans learned that lesson centuries ago. While you were building bigger ships, we were learning to make things smaller and more efficient." Walker watched as the Council ships tried to fight back. Their huge weapons were powerful but slow. The human ships dodged easily, their superior maneuverability making the massive Council vessels look like they were standing still. "Captain," her tactical officer reported, "the Council flagship is preparing to fire their main cannon again." "Interesting choice," Walker said. She pressed a button on her chair. "Guardian actual to engineering. Time to show them our special trick." The Guardian turned to face the Council flagship. As Reed's massive ship charged its main weapon, a small port opened on the Guardian's bow. A beam of energy no wider than a pencil shot out. The Council flagship's main cannon exploded in a shower of sparks. "What did you do?" Reed demanded over the comm channel. "Targeted energy pulse," Walker explained. "We saw how much power you were pumping into that cannon. All we did was give it a little push in the wrong direction. When you build things too big, they become easy targets." Thompson stepped forward on the Council bridge. "Admiral, I tried to warn you. Humans didn't build small ships because we had to. We built them this way because it's better, more efficient, more powerful. Everything the Council puts in a 5-mile ship, we can fit in something smaller than your shuttle." The remains of the Council fleet hung motionless in space, their mighty engines disabled by precise shots from ships they had called toys. "Your choice, Admiral," Walker's voice came through again. "Surrender, or we can keep demonstrating why humanity chose to build small but powerful ships." Reed looked at his ruined fleet, then at Thompson, and finally at the tiny but deadly human ships surrounding him. The lesson had been learned. Size, truly, wasn't everything. Admiral Reed stared at his fleet's status display with all 4 eyes wide open. Half his ships were disabled, their massive engines dark and cold. The other half had weapon systems that were either destroyed or too damaged to use. His mighty Third Fleet, pride of the Galactic Council, had been humbled by ships he had called toys. "Sir," His navigation officer spoke quietly. The backup drives are still working. We could attempt an emergency jump to hyperspace. Reed's scales rippled with desperate hope. Yes, yes. All functional ships, prepare for emergency jump. We'll return with the entire Council armada. Thompson shook his head as he watched the Council crew scramble to activate their backup systems. Admiral, I wouldn't recommend that. Silence. Reed snarled. You knew about this. You knew what your people could do. I tried to warn you, Thompson replied calmly. Multiple times. But you didn't want to believe that small ships could be powerful. And you still haven't seen our biggest surprise. On the Guardian, Captain Walker watched the Council ships powering up their backup drives. They're trying to run, she reported to Fleet Command. Permission to activate the gravity web. Permission granted, came the reply. Show them why no one escapes from Earth's fleet. Walker smiled. All ships deploy gravity anchors. Full coverage pattern. The human ships moved again, taking up new positions around the Council fleet. Small ports opened on their hulls, each one barely visible to the naked eye. But from these tiny openings came humanity's most advanced technology. Jump drives spinning up. Reed's engineering officer called out. Emergency jump in 10 seconds. Thompson walked to the nearest window, looking out at the human ships. I really wouldn't do that, he said again. The Council ships engaged their jump drives. Space began to bend around their massive hulls as they prepared to tear open holes in reality. Reed watched the countdown with desperate hope. Nothing happened. Jump failed. The engineering officer shouted. Trying again. Failed. Something's wrong with space itself. Gravity anchors deployed and active, Captain, reported the Guardian's science officer. The Council fleet is locked in normal space. They're not going anywhere. Walker opened a channel to the Council flagship. Admiral Reed, I recommend against trying your jump drives again. The gravity web we deployed makes faster-than-light travel impossible in this area. You'll just burn out your engines. Reed stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human ships had created a web of gravitational distortions that trapped his fleet in normal space. That's impossible. The power needed to manipulate gravity like that would fill a ship the size of yours, Thompson asked. Only if you use outdated technology. Humanity learned to control gravity centuries ago. We just learned to do it efficiently. The tactical display showed the true nature of humanity's trap. Each small ship was projecting a field of controlled gravity, all linking together into a web that made escape impossible. The mighty Council ships were caught like flies in a spider's web. Admiral, Reed's tactical officer reported, voice shaking, detecting more power spikes from the human vessels. They're targeting our life support systems. Walker's voice came through again. This is your last chance, Admiral. Surrender now, and we can talk about why the Council thinks it can demand protection money from other species. Or we can disable your life support and have this conversation in a less comfortable setting. Thompson watched as Reed's shoulders slumped. The Admiral's scales had turned a pale gray, a sign of defeat in his species. Stand down all systems, Reed ordered quietly. Send the surrender signal. The massive Council ships went dark one by one, their running lights switching to the universal color for surrender. The tiny human ships remained in position, their gravity web ensuring no last-minute escapes were possible. Walker looked at her bridge crew, seeing pride in their eyes. Send word to Earth. The Council fleet is contained and has surrendered. Request diplomatic teams for prisoner processing. The mighty Third Fleet hung powerless in space, surrounded by ships a fraction of their size. Their crews were about to learn why humanity had chosen a different path in ship design. Sometimes, the smallest things pack the biggest surprises. 1 week after the surrender of the Third Fleet, the Galactic Council's emergency chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from every spacefaring race had gathered to discuss what many were calling the human revelation. At the center of the chamber, Captain Walker stood calmly beside Intelligence Officer Thompson. They faced the Council leadership, who looked much less confident than they had during the first contact meeting. The Council President spoke first, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights. This emergency session will now begin. We are here to discuss the incident involving our Third Fleet and to formally recognize Earth's position in the galactic community. In the audience, Admiral Reed sat quietly, his scales still a pale shade of gray. His report had shocked the entire Council, how ships smaller than Council shuttles had disabled the mighty Third Fleet without destroying a single vessel. Would the human representatives care to explain their technological achievements? The President asked. Walker stepped forward. It's quite simple, really. Humanity took a different path than the Council races. While you focused on building bigger ships, we learned to make things smaller and more efficient. She activated a holographic display, showing the internal layout of a Council ship compared to a human vessel of the same power output. The Council ship was huge, filled with massive engines and weapon systems. The human ship was tiny, but every space was used perfectly. Your ships, Thompson added, are like empty houses with a few large machines inside. Ours are more like packed toolboxes, where every cubic inch has a purpose. The Council members murmured among themselves. A senior engineer stood up. But the power requirements, the size needed for the generators alone. Walker smiled. That's where human ingenuity came in. We learned that bigger isn't always better. Our engineers found ways to make systems smaller while making them more powerful. Everything you put in a 5-mile ship, we can fit in something smaller than your shuttle. The display changed to show the battle. Council members watched in silence as the tiny human ships disabled their mighty fleet with surgical precision. We could have built big ships, Thompson explained. But we ask ourselves, why waste resources? Why build a giant target when you can build something small and deadly? The Council President leaned forward. And the gravity control technology. Our scientists say it's impossible to generate fields that powerful from ships so small. Impossible with your current technology, Walker corrected politely. Again, we focused on efficiency. Your gravity generators fill entire decks. Ours fit in a closet and work better. Reed finally spoke up from his seat. Why show us mercy? You could have destroyed my fleet. Because that's not our way, Walker replied. We didn't build our fleet for destruction. We built it for defense, to protect Earth, and, if necessary, to help others. The Council chambers erupted in discussion. The President called for order, then turned back to the human representatives. The Council recognizes that we have made a serious error in judgment, he announced. Effective immediately, all protection fees are abolished. Earth will be granted a permanent seat on the Council, and we formally request human assistance in upgrading our technological base. Walker and Thompson exchanged glances. This was exactly what Earth had hoped for, a chance to help guide the galaxy toward a better future. We accept, Walker said, on one condition. The Council must change its approach to new spacefaring races. No more intimidation. No more demands for payment. We help them grow, or we don't interfere at all. The President nodded solemnly. Agreed. Let this be a lesson to us all. Never judge by size alone. The humans have shown us that greatness comes in all forms. As the chamber filled with approving sounds from various species, Thompson looked at his datapad. The report he had tried to submit before the battle, the one warning about human capabilities, had finally been read. Its status had been updated. Critical intelligence, highest priority, required reading for all Council members. The galaxy was changing. The age of giant, wasteful ships was ending. Humanity's approach to technology, smaller, smarter, more efficient, would help guide the Council races into a new era. Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest sources.